You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM. And I've got the pleasure of being joined online by Laura Bird, who is the founder of an organization called Free for Life, involved in helping people with addictions come free from addictions in the Southwest, particularly in and around Oakhampton. Hi, Laura. It's great to be speaking with you.
Hi, Dave. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, not at all. We're going to talk specifically about an event that's coming up not too long now in March, kind of in the Southwest, sort of just about in the Southwest. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, tell us a little bit about your kind of journey of working with people with addiction, sort of why that's been something on your heart particularly, and sort of some of your work that you're involved in.
Okay, great. Yeah, I actually, you might hear from my accent. It's not from this area. I'm originated up in Scotland, and I came down to the Southwest and to Oakhampton in particular when I was 25, and that was back down in 1996. So you can do the maths. And I started working for Gilead Foundations. And Gilead Foundations was a residential rehabilitation centre working with people who had addiction issues, both men, women, and sometimes their families came as well. And so I worked there for 22 years. So that was what kind of got me involved with working with people in addiction, and just interested in working with people who are stuck and need an extra bit of support just to live a life of freedom and hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's amazing work to be involved in, and often in some quarters of society, maybe less so now. I mean, you can probably speak to this, but people who sometimes get forgotten or maybe get overlooked by certain people in society, thinking, oh, it's their fault, they've got them into this and stuff. I think that's much less so now, but certainly, there's a bit of stigma around addictions, or has been in the past, hasn't there?
Definitely. And I think people might have a certain person in mind when they think about people who are struggling with addictions, whether it's drug addiction or alcoholism. But the fact of the matter is that actually it's a disease, and it can impact on anybody, whoever they are, whatever age, whatever class, whatever color, whatever anything, wherever around the world, people can be impacted by addiction, and they need support and help. And I think one of the key phrases I learned throughout my time in Gilead was, you cannot do recovery on your own. And essentially, we all made as social beings, and we all need one another for all sorts of things, but certainly with addiction, you need other people to support you and help you, to be accountable to help you kind of work through that problem.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool to hear that. And so obviously Gilead was, residential, a lot of people sort of living there on site. What's the nature of your work now with Free for Life? How does that kind of look?
So Free for Life is working in the Oakhampton community. So I basically meet with people once a week in the evening, and support them where they're at. So some might be in addiction still, but are just looking for what can they do. And some might be in recovery from addiction and just need that additional support still, just to help keep on that track and talk things through, and just talk about everyday life with somebody who perhaps understands the triggers and the problems that could cause them to make a big decision that causes them to veer back into their addiction. So it's so that's what I do.
Yeah, amazing. So kind of that continual support and relationship and connection with people just in the community where you are. And you kind of passionate about wanting to see other people enabled to sort of do similar things, aren't you? People with the same heart. And I suppose that's the reason for being involved in the conference that we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's as much your passion to kind of like help other people to help other people as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think with the organisation Isaac that we're going to be talking about, so it's ISAAC, which stands for the International Substance Abuse and Addiction Coalition. And essentially, it really is worldwide, and it pulls together a network of people who work with people who have got addictions, but from a Christian perspective. And I think it's just rubbing shoulders with like-minded people who go through similar situations. So it's not only a support for people who are working with people with addictions, but it also stirs up your ideas and your thoughts of, oh, maybe I could do it this way or that way. And it's that whole kind of relationship with somebody that inspires and causes you just to think, oh, what can I do differently? And for people who are possibly thinking about helping with people with addictions, I don't know how to do it or where to go, then it's definitely a network that really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Because getting started in that work must be challenging because, it's a whole big area. Unless I suppose, if you've got a history of addiction yourself, I don't know if you do, but that maybe helps for some people open the door. But if you haven't, but you're just passionate about seeing people freed and maybe you've got friends or family, then making a start, knowing where to start, sort of how to do it is a really big part of the step, big part of the process, I should imagine.
Definitely, and I think what it does is it takes away the fear, because I
Mm,
think there's a lot of fear factor in any situation where you're not sure and you don't really know what to expect, and that is essentially, the fear of the unknown. But
yeah.
if you get involved with people who have been working in that area for a long time, then they can kind of impart their knowledge. But then also, as you perhaps start working with people who've got addictions, or even somebody might come along who's got addiction themselves and say, well, how can I get out of this, and I'm fearful because of this and this, then it's just really helpful to have people around who have gone through similar experiences and to share what they did and how they did it and what worked and
Yeah,
what
yeah.
didn't work.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we're going to stop for some music now and pick up the conversation with Laura. Talk specifically about this conference coming up in March, which is not too far around the corner. Talk more about that after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM in conversation with founder of Free for Life, Laura Bird, who's been involved for over 2 decades, you were saying in the last section, in terms of helping people come free from addiction. You sort of said a bit about your journey, but why did you get started with it in the first place? And also, why did you kind of come so far from Scotland down to the southwest to do that? What was your kind of reasons for that, if you can kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was kind of by accident. And I think
Right.
a lot of people, when they find what they want to do, often it is because they kind of stumble across it. And so for me, I'd moved from Scotland because I was brought up in the east part in between Dundee and Perth. And then I moved down to Liverpool, and that's where I was studying. And so I studied in Liverpool, and I stayed for a few more years working in Liverpool, mainly with youth in Liverpool. And then I was just thinking about what was next. And so that was kind of my next decision and a bit of a crossroads. And then I'd come down to a festival down in near Rockhampton called Cross Rhythms
Yeah,
Festival.
nice.
And so I'd come down with another organisation in Liverpool. It was called MCD, Movement for Christian Democracy. And so I'd come down as a bit of a helper. And I came down 2 years in a row just to help out with the stall. And while I was there, found out a little bit more about Gilead Foundations, because that's where Cross Rhythms Festival was. It was based on the farm. And so I
Sure.
found out a little bit about what they did. And I just thought, oh, maybe that's something I could go and do next and volunteer at for a little while. And so I came down in the September 1996 and thought I would maybe be there for 6 months, 12 months, and then go off and do my next adventure. And I didn't leave. I
Wow.
just stayed. And I kind of felt that I'd found my niche because I really enjoyed being in the countryside. I enjoyed working on the farm, and I really enjoy working with people.
Yeah.
And so the combination of working with people who came to Gilead, and also doing that from a Christian perspective as well, because I think before, when I was working in Liverpool, I was working with youth, often young offenders, but in a secular environment, and just felt quite frustrated that I wasn't able to talk to them about Jesus, talk to them about faith, talk to them about God, and what possibly could help them, well, what would and could help them more, and just give them more of a fullness and focus. And so my next step was thinking, actually, I'd like to work in an organization with people and be able to be free to talk about Jesus and my faith and God and my journey in that way. And so that's kind of what led me to working initially at Gilead, and then just found kind of I enjoyed it and so stayed.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that you kind of ended up kind of accidentally finding your calling, and then the rest is history, as they say. More than 2 decades later, you've had a lot of experience working with people with addictions, and now I suppose, as you say, on to the next phase of that with Free for Life, for however long that's been, and looking how that develops, sort of just in the community, really, around Oakhampton and in the southwest. So let's get into the specifics then of this conference. It's called Filling the Void. It's put on with Isaac. So as you said, the International Substance Abuse and Addiction Coalition. It's Saturday, the 15th of March, and there's a pre-conference thing on the 14th of March as well. But tell us a little bit about it, sort of where it is, how people can get along to it, and sort of who it's for as well.
Okay, great. So the conference is being held at St Michael's Conference Centre in Bristol. And I've never been there yet, but I've looked on the map, and it's really close to a train station. So if people aren't driving, then they can get there by train, as well as driving. And like Dave was saying, it's going to be held on the main conference is on the 15th, March the 15th, and that's on a Saturday. And that's going to be an all-day conference, and it's pulling together and networking lots of different people who are already working in the field of addiction, and from a Christian perspective, people who are using different Christian models or working from a church, or might even be individuals who are reaching out to people with addictions, and so people will be there to listen to the different seminars. We've got like 5 different seminars and 2 keynote speakers who are going to be there, but also we're going to have lots of stalls. I'm going to be holding a stall there. I am going to be looking at the Genesis process, which is a program that we used at Gilead and I still use now, and that's an international program that's used to help people work through their addictions. And it's from a Christian perspective as well, looking at the brain and why people are addicted, and kind of pulls it all together. And there's lots of other stalls going to be there for people just to show different things that they're doing and different networks of support that people can get involved in. So that's like Saturday from I think it's 8:30. The doors open, and it starts at 9:15 through till 4 in the afternoon.
Great. So a really full day, and a lot there for people. And as you say, it's really for anyone who is either currently working with addicts and helping them find freedom, or people who maybe are looking to start that work, just to kind of, as you say, give them a real sense of direction on that, pointers. I loved what you said earlier, that like you sort of, it's always important to learn from other people's mistakes, so you don't have to learn from your own. So hearing what's good and what works, but also kind of maybe some of the pitfalls to avoid and stuff. There's a little quote here that you've put on the information you sent me. It's from one of the keynote speakers, and in terms of the theme of fill the void, or filling the void, is looking at how did we get here, and how can we find freedom from addiction. Addiction today is not just about drug or alcohol abuse. It's about gambling addictions, porn dependencies, workaholism, and internet addictions. I love that, and it's really interesting because that was going to be one of my questions, that I was going to ask plainly, is it just about drug and alcohol, or is it more than that? Because addictions now, with more research, with more understanding, as you said earlier, it's a disease. It's something that can people can fall into, where the kind of symptom of it is lots of different things, whether it's, as it says there, work or social media. Phone addiction now is a big thing, as well as kind of just drug and alcohol, which was maybe how it was seen traditionally. So this is looking at addiction as a whole then.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the title, Filling the Void, has got a subtitle as well, which says Walking with People Recovering from the Many Faces of Addiction. And I think it's recognizing that when people are doing compulsive behavior, which is taking them away from a focus on what's good for them, then that can be addictive. It can be all sorts of things, like you were mentioning, Dave, all those things, and also eating and all sorts of things. TV, it's just pulling yourself away. It's the distraction, and the filling the void. I think one of the things that when I was the Genesis process was all designed by a guy called Mike Dye, and he used to say that every human being has an empty place, and that empty place is like a hole inside us that really needs to be filled with God. But we try and fill it with other things. And so we try and fill that void with the other things that are often unhealthy for us. And it might look really healthy. It might be exercise. It might look really, really healthy at the beginning, but then we get compulsive about it. and it distracts us from the things that we really need to be doing. And sometimes, even if we're going through a really tricky time, we might be grieving for something might have gone really wrong in our lives. And instead of dealing with that thing and working through it, we just avoid it and, use other things to distract us. And that can be really damaging. And so I think with this conference, it's looking at not just drugs and alcohol, which would be, I guess, the common things that you would think about when you think about addiction, but all sorts of things.
Yeah. Great. We'll stop for some music and pick up the conversation in a final part with Laura after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM. I'm in conversation with Laura Bird from Free for Life, which is an organization working with people, particularly in Oakhampton, with addictions. And you're coming at it from a lot of experience, Laura. Good old time, couple of decades or more of working with people in addiction and helping them come free. And you talked quite a lot in that last section, which is really interesting in terms of your motivations and faith being a big motivation for you and kind of wanting in your starting out your work, helping people at Gilead coming free from addiction, was wanting to be able to share the hope that you found in your faith, the hope and life and freedom that you found in Jesus with these people who have addictions. Now, it's up to them, obviously, how much they take that on or not, as is the case anytime anyone shares faith, really, or whatever. But it's a really interesting one that kind of overlaps with kind of addiction treatment or helping people with addictions and faith. You look at probably most famous addiction kind of groups that's been ongoing for many years, Alcoholics Anonymous, that has its roots in faith, maybe not so much now in every group, but every group, as far as I'm aware, the 12-step program, all of that talks about a higher power, talks about sort of the thing you talked about in the last section of filling that void, the kind of need that everyone has inside them for a sense of more. What is my purpose? What's my meaning? What's my value? What is life all about? As it says in Alcoholics Anonymous, looking for that higher power. And obviously for yourself, for myself, for Christians, it's finding Jesus, it's finding his love for them. So there's a real, even as I say, in an Alcoholics Anonymous, which is used around the world, lots of people find freedom through that group. There's a real overlap, isn't there, in faith and in those deeper conversations, deeper kind of questions of life and addiction and coming free from addiction. There's real interlinking things right through, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the 12 steps is amazing, and I've often read the 12 steps of AA and thought, gosh, somebody sat down. Well, the bill of 12 steps and sat down and thought through all that wording. And if you go through each one of them, it's just so profound but just helps people move on one step at a time. And I guess as well as the AA and the 12 steps and kind of people who've got addictions being helped by people who've got addictions and found freedom themselves, I suppose the other organizations as well is other people who haven't had an addiction in that way that's been life controlling and unmanageable, coming alongside and saying, well, how can I help as well? And I guess developing other programs and things that they could say, well, how about this and how about that? But it is definitely, I think the AA definitely talk about the higher power, and although anybody can replace the higher power with whatever they want. And I've heard a lot of people who have shared in AA say, if it had just been like the Christian God, I wouldn't have been able to step over the threshold. It needed to be the higher power of my understanding. But then a lot of people then who go through AA and find themselves and find their own value again can then turn to a Christian God. And I think sometimes it's the how they feel repelled by it initially, but then are drawn in because I think maybe their perception of God and Christianity has been jaded maybe over the years. And so but I think having the faith side of things when you're helping people with addictions or any kind of controlling problem is really powerful, because it means you can call out for somebody greater than ourselves, our own willpower, which fails time and time again.
Yeah. That's kind of the nature of the problem, I suppose, with addiction, is that you need that help beyond yourself. And I love how you've said it there, and it's kind of been something I've learned the more I've spoken to people who either have addiction, had addiction, or work with people with addiction. Is it's something ingrained in the person. It's something that they're struggling with. That's like, you described it as a disease, really, and I think that's the best way to see it. Because in the past, you think of like alcohol or drugs, particularly. I think drugs would be the big one. It's easy to think that it's the drug they're taking that is addictive, and that's the problem. But now, as this conference is talking about, and you're talking about, you can be addicted to all kinds of things, which in and of themselves aren't necessarily addictive to everyone. Whether it's poor habits with food, with just any number of lifestyle things that become addictive. So it does speak to the person as themselves and what they need for their own sense of value, their own sense of worth, their own sense of coming through that and coming out the other side of addiction, whatever it is. So let's talk then specifically about this conference. You've mentioned the conference day on the Saturday, but the pre-conference, what's that? Who's that for?
So on Friday the 14th, we're going to have two events happening. There's going to be an event happening from 3 till 4:30 on the Friday, which welcomes anybody who's involved in a church who wants to also talk about and be involved in working and helping people with addictions. And I think the plan is that there's going to be a panel of people who have been working for a long time in the addiction realm, and there will be like a question and answer time and a sharing time. So that can be for, it says church leaders, but anybody actually who's in the church who's kind of going that way. And so if you've got time on the Friday or you're arriving early the day before for the conference on the Saturday, then 3 to 4:30 is going to be a really good time of meeting other people who are also church goers, leaders who are looking at working with or who are working with people with addictions, and also talking to the panel of people and getting and pulling on their wisdom. So get some questions ready for that. And then after that, from 7 till 9, there's going to be a networking event with refreshments. And that's going to be for anybody who's around the night before who wants to come and just, make time to chat to different people. And I think for myself, when I've gone to different conferences, that's sometimes the best part. Yeah. It is, great to hear all the information from the stage, but sometimes just chatting to the people who are around and about you, because that's when you can really kind of make connections and find people who are akin to the things that you're wanting to do or have done already, and just make those relationships. And I think so it's making time for that as well on the Friday night if people are able to come along.
Yeah, great stuff. So the conference itself, I think we've touched on this, but in case we haven't, individual tickets £50. There are concessions available, but check out the website. That's kind of the best place to go. So it's isaac-international.org. That's isaac-international.org. And there is an email address as well. So conference@isaac-international.org. For people who have questions and want to find out about it. As you say, it's coming at it from a Christian perspective, but it is open to all. So if you're just kind of involved, you're not a Christian, but you're kind of open to that and want to just find out some great advice, help, support in terms of helping other people with addiction, it's open to you as well. But definitely coming at it from a Christian viewpoint and things. So yeah, that's great, Laura. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we sign off?
Yeah, and just also there's also a discount for people who come more than 4 people. I think 4 people or more can get discounts on tickets. And so, but yeah, do come along, because I think it's going to be a really great event. And like I say, it kind of pulls from people internationally. And the last conference they had was actually in Kuala Lumpur, and It was Jackie Pullinger, who was there as one of the keynote speakers. And she's really famous in the field of working with people with addictions, having gone over to Hong Kong, and she wrote the book Chasing the Dragon. So that's the kind of caliber of people who are coming together and talking about their experience of helping people. So that's I think it'll be a really good time for people just to come and just hear about what's going on. And even if you haven't got anything planned, but you just want to know more how to work with people who've got addictions, because let's face it, I think there's probably not one person who doesn't know somebody who's got an addiction of some sort. Yeah. And if you think that you could be the integral person to reach out and help, then come along, because this will give you lots of ideas and also confidence in how to do that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think it's as you say, as stigma drops around the conversation around addiction, then suddenly you realize maybe more people than we thought struggle with it. So therefore there's maybe more need, we're aware of them before. So if you are, as you say, thinking, do you know what, it's maybe even just a few of my mates or a few people in my church group that I want to help, then do make an effort to come along to this. And it might seem a way away from us here in Plymouth, in Bristol, but if you're thinking the last international conference was Kuala Lumpur, it's a fair bit closer than that. So make the effort to get there to Bristol. It's not that far, and you'll have a fantastic time. Again, so individual tickets, £50, concessions for groups of 4 or more. Isaac-international.org is the website. Check it out and get yourself down to the Filling the Void conference.